Good afternoon, everybody, or good evening, or good morning, wherever you happen to be in the world. And I think in Glasgow, we're still just about in the afternoon. Difficult to tell. I think we're in a different time zone, different world, it seems, after being at COP for 2 weeks with no windows. So this is our final session in our small but mighty Peatland Pavilion. And the purpose of that is, or the purpose of this kind of last session is really to take stock, I suppose, have a little bit of reflection, and also to look ahead. What are some of the key messages that we really need to kind of move beyond this pavilion to implement some kind of action into the future? And the way that we're going to run this last session is that we're going to start in Scotland with our minister here, Lorna Slater, of Green Skills, Circular Economy and Biodiversity. And Lorna's going to give us some perspective from Scotland. We're going to kind of start to move out a little bit into the other countries in the UK and also then into Europe. And we'll then move over to Dianna Kopansky, who's the coordinator of the UN Environment Programme Global Peatland Initiative. And Diana's going to give us a global perspective. And then we're going to end up with Richard Lindsay, who I think a lot of people know in our Peatland community, who's just an enduring inspiration, really. And I think we all wanted to give Richard the last word. So sorry for building you up there, Richard. Okay, so should we start in Scotland? It's my great pleasure to introduce Lorna Slater, our Minister for Green Skills, Circular Economy and Biodiversity.
Thank you very much. I was just discussing as I came in there that it's interesting that all three elements of my portfolio, the green skills, the circular economy, and the more obvious biodiversity, all touch on peatlands. In terms of green skills, there are wonderful job opportunities in restoring peatland that we need to make sure we have people trained to do. In terms of the circular economy, our soil health depends on not wasting nitrogen in our soil and closing that circle on our nitrogen cycle. And of course, the biodiversity piece is the more obvious one. I'm delighted to be here with you all to mark the closing of the first ever Peatland Pavilion at the Conference of the Parties. The Scottish Government has been proud to sponsor this pavilion, and I have been impressed by the rich programme of events over the past fortnight that have very successfully raised the profile of peatlands on the international stage. I commend the organisers, including the IUCN UK Peatland Programme, the Global Peatlands Initiative, and Wetlands International, to name but a few, for the vision and hard work that made this physical and virtual space a reality. I've particularly enjoyed that map just on the other side of the wall. It's wonderful. I grew up in Canada and I didn't know we had peatlands. Apparently, I've just been told we call them muskeg, and there are trees on them. I didn't know any of that. That's brilliant. So that part of Canada we call the Canadian Shield, and it's where most of our woodlands are in Canada. Huge towering trees there. So there you go. That's something I learned about peatlands that I didn't know. I would like to take this opportunity to reflect on some of the themes that have emerged in this 2 weeks, and also to underline the commitment we have here in Scotland to do more for these vital ecosystems. Peatland habitats are a key part of the Scottish landscape, as well as our cultural and natural heritage. Approximately a quarter of Scotland's land area is covered in peat, which stores over 3 billion tonnes of carbon. We have 15% of the world's blanket bog. Peatland habitats also benefit the environment and our communities by improving water quality and reducing flood risk. And of course, the condition of Scotland's peatlands are critically important in supporting biodiversity, providing an important habitat for highly specialised animals and plants from sphagnum mosses, sphagnum mosses and carnivorous sundews to golden plovers, hen harriers and golden eagles. I am the golden eagle species champion in the Scottish Parliament, so I'm very excited about that. However, as it is now widely recognised, a large extent of our peatlands are degraded and emit rather than capture carbon. We urgently need to address this considerable source of emissions if Scotland is to become net zero by 2045. This is a challenge, but it also presents us with a great opportunity to invest in this nature-based solution par excellence to mitigate and adapt to climate change while simultaneously providing ecosystem services and restoring nature. In order to create conditions for healthy, resilient peatlands, we must do three things. Firstly, we must protect them from negative impacts. Secondly, we must sustainably manage them for the future. And thirdly, we must restore and reverse as much damage as we can. Firstly, in terms of protection, addressing the extraction. We are taking direct action to protect and further prevent damage from extraction. Peat in Scotland is extracted largely for use as a growing medium by the horticultural industry, with smaller scale extraction taking place for our whisky industry. Our crofting communities also have a long tradition of peat cutting for domestic fuel and heating. Commercial extraction leads to drying, loss of biodiversity, increased degradation, and significant emissions. Indeed, just in the past week, we have seen growing calls for action to limit the use of peat in gardening and commercial horticulture. The Scottish Government has pledged to phase out the use of peat in horticulture, and as a first step, we are currently progressing work to ban the sale of peat-related gardening products in Scotland. And through our forthcoming national planning framework, we have also stated our intention not to support applications for new commercial peat extraction for horticultural purposes, including extensions on existing sites. Secondly, sustainable management. In response to independent reviews, we are also toughening our approach to deer management and burning on grouse moors, which both damage peatland. And through the new national planning framework, we are strengthening consideration of development on peatland and carbon-rich soils. Finally, restoration. We have been supporting peatland restoration in Scotland for a number of years. Since 2012, the Scottish Government funding has put around 30,000 hectares of degraded peatland back on the road to recovery. This is a good start, but we know we need to go much further. We are committed to significantly increase the rate and scale of peatland restoration to help meet our emission reduction targets of our climate change plan. To that end, we have committed to restore at least 250,000 hectares of degraded peatland by 2030. This will invest $250 million over a decade to support this. For those of you who are counting, that's basically we need to do 10 times what we've done in the last 10 years over the next 10 years, for those of you tracking the numbers. That's an enormous scale up, really ambitious, but I'm very excited about it. This long-term commitment will allow multi-year landscape-scale projects to be implemented, boosting delivery and increasing the confidence of the private sector to invest in the people and machinery to do this work. This investment will support Scotland's rural economy, create economic opportunities and good green jobs that will enable us to deliver a just transition to net zero. These targets represent a step change in our achievements to date, and we do not underestimate the challenges that we face. We are working hard on multiple fronts to address these and to raise public awareness about the importance of peatlands in addressing the twin crises of climate change and loss of biodiversity. This is crucial because we in government cannot work alone. We will need the collective support of researchers, farmers, crofters, investors, contractors, and our rural communities to help us transform the way we use the land and the way we manage our peatlands. This Peatland Pavilion has certainly helped us a great deal in this regard. From a Scottish perspective, COP26 and this pavilion has allowed us to celebrate peatlands internationally and to share knowledge and experience and build new networks. At the opening of this pavilion, our Cabinet Secretary for Net Zero, Energy and Transport, Michael Matheson, signed a memorandum of understanding between the Scottish Government and the Ministry of the Environment of Chile on the conservation and management of wetlands and aquatic ecosystems. Like Scotland, Chile has extensive peatland and wetland habitats, freshwater and marine, that are under threat of degradation. This agreement will provide a framework for ongoing international collaboration between Scotland and Chile. Through other events, Scottish experts and policymakers, including many of my ministerial colleagues, have been able to share our enthusiasm and ambition for our peatlands. Kate Forbes, Cabinet Secretary for Economy and Finance, spoke of the importance of blending public and private investment to support Scotland's natural capital, including peatlands. And in a number of events, Mari McCallan, the Minister for Environment and Land Reform, has highlighted the advanced state of peatland restoration science and practice in Scotland, and highlighted the connections with wetlands in our Nordic neighbours. I also want to recognise the fantastic science and research that has been presented throughout the Pavilion's programme. For example, the new Global Peatlands Assessment and the Global Peatlands Map that have been discussed show fantastic progress in our understanding of peatlands. However, I acknowledge there is still much to learn through further research if we are to meet our climate and nature restoration goals. For example, in Scotland, we are working to gain a better understanding of the emissions from different types of peatland to allow effective targeting going forward. As I have mentioned, Scotland leaves COP26 having made connections with colleagues from Chile to the Arctic. And just today, we have been involved in discussions on the prospect of a new multi-party European initiative on peatlands. This fortnight in this pavilion has indeed given us much food for thought. As Minister for Biodiversity, I also want to take a moment to look forward to the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP15, which will be held in coming China next year. We know that Scotland is seeing a dramatic decline in its biodiversity. We have one of the lowest global scores for how intact our biodiversity is, or rather isn't. We are working hard to reverse that, and protection and sustainable management of a network of peatland sites has an important role to play. COP26 has provided opportunity to highlight the interconnection of nature and climate and to discuss the essential role that local and subnational levels of government play in translating global goals and targets into tangible and transformative local actions for both the biodiversity and climate crises. Through our leadership of the Edinburgh process, the Scottish Government is working to maximise the delivery of the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework across all levels of government. The Edinburgh Declaration, signed by over 200 governments, cities, and local authorities, sets out commitments to take positive and transformative action for biodiversity over the next 10 years in order to implement the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework and targets, which will be set at the CBD COP15 meeting in China next spring. 12 new signatories of the Edinburgh Declaration emerged at COP26, making their commitment to addressing the twin crises. We continue to build on this support and will present the declaration at COP15 to demonstrate the readiness and willingness of governments at all levels around the globe to take the bold actions needed for humanity to live in harmony with nature. As more and more people are coming to recognize peatland restoration and protection is an outstanding opportunity to utilize a nature-based solution to mitigate both climate change and loss of biodiversity. It is imperative that we work together to seize this opportunity. The Pavilion has given us, so many of us, an opportunity to engage on peatland issues, to establish and strengthen collaboration on a global scale. But the impacts will be felt far beyond this room, and the legacy of this pavilion is what I'm really excited about. I'm sure that in the spirit of partnership, which has been fostered here by the organisers of the Peatland Pavilion, that this will continue. And I look forward to continuing to engage with the international community in our shared responsibility to protect, manage, and restore the world's peatlands. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister. I think you did an excellent job there in trying to sum up actually the commitments and activity that the Scottish Government have been involved with over the last 2 weeks, and in particular here on the Peatlands Pavilion. And as I've been walking around on some of the other pavilions, I've seen Scottish ministers also there, and Andrew, Chief Scientist, who have been really extolling the virtues of peatlands. So I think you've been playing a blinder really as far as peatlands at this COP is concerned. So thank you. And thank you also for acknowledging, I think, some of the challenges. You know, we kind of haven't got there yet. I think we know maybe what some of the solutions are. But there is a big challenge for us to address, I think, and I'll come on to some of those in a second. So just a few reflections, I think, from my perspective and the perspective of our peatland community here. And maybe just to start with a reflection of our physical space, because there's some meaning to that. So, you know, this is the first time we've had a Peatlands Pavilion at a COP. We're on the edge physically of all the other pavilions. Maybe that says something. We built this. So the people in this room built this space. You know, we didn't kind of get some big company in to make us some kind of glossy building. We did it. And I think that kind of speaks volumes, actually, for the peatland community. And so this space, I think, has a bit of soul. It's maybe got a wet soul, but it has a bit of soul, because it's made by us. And I've seen people over the last 2 weeks coming in and out of this space and treating it a little bit like home, because it's friendly and it's very welcoming. And I think that says a lot about us. And the other thing, I think, you know, what we've really kind of learned through all of the presentations and discussions and talks and interactions, is that a little bit like this pavilion, the value with peatlands is more than skin deep. So you know, there's a lot of depth to what's been happening here. It's impossible, I think, to sum up all of what we've learned and all of what has been said from a UK nation's perspective. And I'm not going to attempt to do all of that. And the beauty, actually, of what we've been able to do is that all of our delegates online and here can kind of go back and hear all of those presentations on the online platform. However, just as a little bit of a kind of geographical tour, you know, we've learned about private finance and things like the water companies in the southwest, recognizing that it's much better to take a nature-based solutions response to fixing our drinking water. So let's fix that in the uplands rather than trying to find a technological solution in the lowlands. Our fens, East Anglian fens, is where I come from. So, you know, I have a spiritual connection to that place. But over centuries, actually, of drainage and conversion to dry agriculture, there's now the prospect of wet agriculture and a future, and a productive and economic future for the East Anglian fens. We've got these brilliant and amazing landscape scale restoration initiatives that we've heard from over the last 2 weeks in our uplands, from Pennine Peat Life and Moors for the Future and the Yorkshire Peatland Partnership. These guys are really, really delivering on the ground at scale, and it's extremely impressive, both what they're doing and actually their collaboration as well, and hopefully the prospect of the Great North Bog. We've heard about what we've been doing on the lowland raised bogs as well in Wales, and Welsh Government have really kind of tackled that and are working with finance through the European Union to address some of the challenges in our lowland raised bogs. And of course, Scotland. So we've just heard from the Minister about a lot of what Scotland's been doing. But actually, just in the last session, we heard about how we're dealing with stakeholders and landowners and managers, which is obviously a kind of long-term solution. And we heard from Cairngorms Connect as well, so delivering peatland restoration at a landscape scale. We've had a lot of Irish voices in our pavilion today, both from north and south of the border, and it's good to reflect actually on the work that the UK Peatland Programme did a few years ago to develop a UK peatland strategy, and we've now got country level strategies that are kind of nestled underneath that. So I think a good demonstration of what we can do at the political level and some collaboration. And we've not shied away from some of the issues. And we had a very strong session around banning peat from horticultural sales. And it's good again to hear the Minister make that commitment here at the Peatlands Pavilion to try and achieve that in Scotland at least. And we've heard similar words from south of the border. There's a slide on the screen with some words, and I was kind of searching around and trying to kind of pin down what the added value is, if you like, of all of this activity and bringing people together in this space and online, and of course it's collaboration, and it's so many conversations have taken place in our water droplet over there. And I just kind of hope that Water Droplet has seeded kind of ideas into other people's minds. And I'm absolutely confident that a lot of things that will kind of move off beyond COP26 from this Peatlands Pavilion will be kind of nestled and grown and nurtured in other people's minds. So what about these messages? Well, I did a silly thing this morning and I kind of asked the Twitter community, well, what should I say? What should some of those messages be? So I hope I don't do a disservice to the Twitter community by missing anybody out. But there are a number here that I think are important. So we absolutely and fundamentally need to keep nature-based solutions on the face of the tin in terms of this COP agreement. Now, peatlands aren't there quite yet, and I would dearly love that they were alongside forestry. And we heard President Biden, or we saw his words anyway, mentioning peatlands alongside forestry, and they are clearly a super nature-based solution. So message number one, that's got to stay there, and peatlands are a big part of that solution. We understand the science, and we certainly understand enough about the science. Methane is not an issue. It's not an issue to prevent us from restoring our peatlands. So that's a kind of clear message, I think, that we want to communicate from the Peatland Pavilion. Protection is important as well as restoration. So we understand this huge volume of carbon that's locked up in our peatlands. And what we must do is to protect those from stopping those becoming a future problem, if you like. So let's protect that 30% of terrestrial carbon. And of course, there's massive gain to be had from restoring our peatlands, which are currently generating about 6% of our global anthropogenic emissions. But the great thing is we know how to fix our peatlands. We've got this brilliant practitioner community, not just here, but actually across the world. And we're onto this. And we've had great demonstration of that and examples from all over the world here. And that creates jobs. And the beauty is that it creates local jobs, so opportunities for local communities. And of course, we all know that I think if you embed the conservation solution into local communities, it's much more likely to endure. So I think that's a kind of a message, if you like, for the whole world. Let's get on and restore peatlands, and that's a great economic opportunity for local communities. But we shouldn't also dismiss, I think, some of the challenges. So that's all the good stuff, but there is still some bad stuff happening. And as a political community and as a global community of solutions, we need to address some of those things. Not least the need to massively upscale our activity and ambition. There's no reason, if you like, there's no barrier to us doing that. I think we're at the right place now to take that step. And we've got to stop damaging our existing peatlands. So there are still some perverse kind of policies and strategies out there which are leading to this damage. So we shouldn't be draining any peatlands anymore. We shouldn't be converting them to agriculture or inappropriate forestry. We shouldn't be burning them or developing even renewable energy schemes on peatlands. We've heard it 2 or 3 times already, but we've got to stop the sale of peat for horticulture. There are viable alternatives. Let's stop that now. And finally, I think there's a great opportunity to bring in private finance alongside. We can't expect governments to kind of provide all of the solution and all of the finance. So I think a kind of key message is we've got some brilliant opportunity to bring in finance, and there are some great instruments and initiatives such as the Peatland Code and Moore's Future that are already kind of operating. And I think there's an opportunity for us as a peatland community to be looking at generating some global principles for how we might manage carbon offsetting and carbon sales that deliver multiple benefits for peatland, not just about carbon. So my final slide here, and one reaction I got back from the Twitter community was, don't forget the kind of cultural value and importance of our peatlands. After all, COP is really about saving humanity, saving us. So I think kind of recognizing humanity and the kind of cultural dimension to peatlands is absolutely a part of the solution here. And the need to educate and provide access and inspiration to kind of underline that. And I guess at the end of the day, society will really only protect what it loves. So I guess the final message is we all need to learn to love our peatlands. Thank you very much. Okay, so really delighted to welcome up now some of our other collaborators in this whole Peatland Pavilion journey. And we're going to start with Jan Peters. Where are you? Jan, you're right in front of me from the Sukkot Foundation. Yeah.
Thank you, Stuart. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really happy. Not that it's almost over, but that we made it. Such a great effort, and it was a long way with all of the great people, great collaboration. And I think it was really a truly global pavilion covering diverse peatland issues from all over the world, and really brought the attention of peatlands on a COP, on the UNFCCC COP, really to a next level. But it also had a very strong European and pan-European angle. What we have heard today from the dialogues towards the European Peatland Initiative, but also from the west in Iceland and Ireland to the east of Russia and the Baltics. We covered many issues on the peatlands in Europe, and also the pavilion really featured the diversity of peatlands in Europe. The fens and bogs, both of them equally important. And this pavilion here really enabled an exchange on policy, but also action within and beyond Europe. Especially in Europe, the status of peatlands is really devastating, what we have seen. In many countries, more than 90% of all peatland habitats are degraded, drained, and not yet lost. They can be restored. There can be a future for them. And we need to work not only on conservation, but also on sustainable land use of these peatlands. We have to invest and share experiences on paludiculture practices, for example, but also carbon farming to bring in the finance, as Stuart already said. The solutions are there. The ideas are there. We just have to make them happen. And I think this pavilion was a great example how such an exchange on new practices, on alternatives can happen, and how we can learn from each other what is successful, what are best practices, what can be taken up by others to bring it to a bigger scale, to a real landscape scale. And we also heard that many issues cannot be just solved by one nation alone, because there are so many interdependencies here in Europe, especially. One of them is, of course, the use of peat, which is mostly important nowadays from the Baltic countries, for example. So solutions can be only found on this European scale. And this is why we not only need, or beside the South-South and triangular exchange, which we have in the Global Peatlands Initiative, we saw that we also need actually a North-North exchange here in Europe and beyond to really learn from each other and make it happen. And I think this pavilion, the Peatland Pavilion, really also created a momentum for that, which paved the way for more exchange, more collaboration, and yeah, a better future for the climate, for nature, but also for us people in the peatlands. Thank you.
Yeah, to make it a bit quicker, I just follow Jan. I'm Franziska, the director of the Greifswald-Meyer Center, and I will say a few words about the map. And it's also here, because it's actually behind everybody sitting here. It is one of the key features of this pavilion. And as many other key features, well, when I arrived with the map in my cross-country skiing bag, we started with duct tape, and then we fixed it for the first night, and then Sarah found a better solution for it, and now it was really then hanging there, fixed, operational, and it really made people stand still, look at the map, and many, many delegates, many observers, many media representatives, they realized they have peatlands in their country. And then we told them, yes, well, almost all countries in the world have peatlands. Maybe when you are from West Sahara, then not, but they are really globally distributed. And it also made people proud. They looked at the map, they saw their peatlands, and they really said, these are our peatlands, these are my peatlands. And I think this is really a very important dimension that we achieved with it. So I also think that such a map would be a very good feature in all potential future pavilions. And yesterday, Inga Andersen, the executive director of the UN Environment Program, said, yeah, now you have to continue. You started with it. We are, I think, still doubting it. It's too early to talk about it. But we, as Stuart said already, it really makes a difference to have such a pavilion here. And we had many ministers at the map. We also had Michelle Obama at the map, but we did not take a picture. Just believe us that she was here. We also had the security people here, the security guards, for example. They came into the pavilion. They were very interested in the evenings, and then we talked with them about the peatlands. So I think it was a wide range of people interested in it. And but it was not only about mere interest. It was, of course, also about influencing policies, politics. And one key issue is the recognition of peatlands, that actually there is, peatlands are included in national policies and essentially also in the nationally determined contributions to the climate convention. So we had several discussions here ongoing with, for example, countries like Uganda or South Sudan about this topic. It is about climate action starting in the countries and about building partnerships. And this was also a key element then that was discussed also in front of the map, which countries could collaborate, for example, in regional approaches. And all of it, the map, and then really hours and hours of talking to many people, of discussions here in the pavilion, will also feed into the global peatland assessment, which is currently being prepared by a big team of peatland conservationists, peatland scientists from all around the world, again coordinated by UN Environment Program and the World Conservation Monitoring Center. And this is, as we are here now connected to a huge community outside the pavilion, also this global peatland assessment, which will be published next year, will then lead into the coming years and decades, hopefully, of better peatland protection and better peatland management. And with this, I hand over to Hans Schutten from Wetlands International to the very global perspective.
Thank you, Franziska. Thank you, Stuart, for giving me the opportunity to reflect on the first ever Peatland Pavilion at COP. It's definitely been an amazing whirlwind, nearly 50 sessions across 12 days, and I feel humbled by the real success stories that I've heard. The huge depth in knowledge and the cry for scaled-up finance and even a larger offer from the finance industry in return. I really feel that. Peatlands are now getting center stage as nature-based solutions. And as you said, Stuart, even President Biden picked up on this, and it was reflected in the strong media interest. We've seen articles coming in Bloomberg, CBS, Washington Post. So Peatlands and the Peatland Pavilion has really put us on the map, not only here in COP, but across the world. One of my favorite quotes came from Minister Bhatt from India, who quoted an old Sanskrit and a very ancient Sanskrit verse, "Nature protects if she is protected." For me, that really hit home, really hit to my heart, and I thought it was quite amazing. I also listened outside the walls of this, of the blue zone that we're in, and hear the cry from the world to turn all our words into action. I think that's absolutely critical. Now we need to move on, turn what we've heard here into action. Pledges are important, but let's go and do it. So what are those ingredients to bake our cake, to turn this all into real success? Knowledge and experience. But that knowledge and experience need to be shared. What we've heard over the last 2 weeks is amazing experience from around the world, on all continents, from Peru and the Congo Basin to Indonesia, Russia and Canada. What we need to do is grab that knowledge, that experience, and multiply that so that all people can hear that and can move forward, turning all these words into action. The Global Peatland Initiative is absolutely crucial in that, and we as community should be doing that. What we need besides the knowledge and experience is willingness and governance at local, regional, national and international stages. Absolutely critical. Leadership from country governments. We've seen governments step up here, step up on the plate and are ready to be counted and are ready to take that stage and take that leadership role, not only to show what's been done, but also to embed the power of peatlands into their NDCs, because only through that we get a long-term success, we get long-term climate action plans. So embedding the power of peatlands in their NDCs is absolutely crucial. And we've seen a range of experiences from countries as far as Indonesia, Peru and Russia, to name but a few, but also closer to home in Europe. The last thing is what's really important as ingredients is finance. And I'm really blown away, to be really honest, by the huge financial opportunities I've seen here at COP. Not only from countries pledging support, but also, and not only from businesses pledging support, but also from whole groups and whole investment funds and investment bonds. Volumes of money for me, completely nearly unimaginable, hundreds of millions up to $500 million of being pledged to do this. And I think that's where we can really make a real difference. But we need to do it in the right way. What we need to be careful, and people have touched upon that as well, is we need to prevent the oven from leaking its heat. So what we need to do is make sure that at this moment in time, peatlands don't continue to be damaged, because there is still the major cause of drainage, such as commodity farming and infrastructure development, still happening across the world. But on the other side, I've seen real willingness from major players to change that and to move forward. So what do we need to do? Where do we need to go? What are the next 3 steps? First of all, protect those remaining jewels in the crown. Absolutely critical. So there are really, the Peatland Map 2.0 that Francisca already referred to is critical. And there's a leap forward in our spatial knowledge. So we know where those amazing peatlands still are. For example, the Cuvette Centrale in the Congos. But finance need to flow to those indigenous communities that have been living in harmony with their peatland surroundings for a long time. Let's make sure they can do that and we can support that. We need to stop the drainage that has damaged that 50 million hectares of peatlands. We can do that. Yeah, there's been a hand reached out here by the industry as well at COP. And I think we need to take that hand up and move forward. But we need to be able to show real success next year at COP or the year after. And then we need to restore the damaged peatlands, the 50 million hectares of damaged peatlands by 2050 that currently emit so much carbon into the atmosphere. And without that, we cannot limit the global warming to 1.5 degrees. So there's a big consortium building, there's big action building. Let's go and do that. And I'd like to wrap up now because I've taken much more time than I should have. And I see people saying, please reduce your time because there's drinks out there as well. I'd like to finish with a reference, one of my, and I'm getting quite personally, one of my heroes, Barack Obama, who spoke earlier this week, who made a very honest and rallying speech. And he said, it's not going to be easy, but humanity is good at solving existential problems. And I think in the Peatland Pavilion here, we've shown that we actually are good as humanity to come together, take those big issues on the head and move it forward. We desperately need to restore these 50 million hectares of drained peatlands by 2050. Otherwise, we cannot reach and cannot meet the 1.5 degrees drained peatlands. So let's join together. And I think this Peatland Pavilion has showed that across the world we should and we can join together and we can show to success, yeah, at next COP. And I can really look my grandchildren and my children in the eye and say, do you know what? At a minute to midnight, we turned this super tanker around, and together we did that. And I really feel that we can that. And I think then coming back to it, we need to come together a minute to midnight to avert a disaster and restore this beautiful world. And coming back to Mr. Barty again, nature protects if she is protected. Thank you.
Thanks. I suppose it's over to me now. Greetings, everyone. It's great to be back with you on the last session. I can't believe it, but yes, we're here. My name is Dianna Kopansky, in case you haven't met me yet, and I have the honor to lead the Global Peatlands Initiative, which is the partnership working to save peatlands as the world's largest terrestrial organic carbon stock. We're now 46 organizations strong. We support all countries to conserve, restore, and sustainably manage their peatlands. But as the speakers have shared, peatlands matter for the climate, people, and planet. We really need to see peatlands recognized as the powerhouse ecosystems they are, rare, diverse, and masterful carbon sinks and stores. Going forward, we need more ambitious countries' NDCs and long-term climate pledges, including peatlands. We really want the people to also reduce emissions, avoid future emissions, and support actions that support nature, water resilience, and ecosystems health. I want to see peatlands mentioned, included in the global biodiversity framework, and prioritized in all multilateral environmental agreements as relevant. More countries need to really dive into peatlands. It's a tiny little space, but an absolute mighty ecosystem. We need to urge bankers, investors, insurance companies that peatlands protection and restoration is important, and they need to stop being undervalued and underinvested in. We need more action and concrete commitments. We congratulate Scotland and Chile and others for having shared their progress, but we need more, and we need it urgently. Indeed, we need to leap forward over the lessons learned by others. We need to see banks and initiatives setting no deforestation, no peat, and no exploitation commitments, and see those become a reality. Really, we need to continue this exchange of south-south, triangular, north-north, but most importantly, peer-to-peer exchanges and diverse exchanges, intergenerational exchanges, and stories. The days of competition are over. We need collaboration. It's urgent and it's important. And this is exactly what collaboration looks like. We're the first generation that can leave the earth in better shape, so we better get to it. I want to just share with you this more lighthearted and spirit of getting things done. This has been my view for the past 2 weeks from my home in Nairobi, from my home office. This is the pavilion that was a culmination of a great idea shared innocently by Richard Lindsay, with encouragement from Andrew Miller and Mechtel Kaspers, and which combined with the sheer determination, grit, and absolute teamwork from the COPE developers has produced an innovative, inspirational, tiny but mighty and meaningful meeting place. This is the first Global Peatlands Pavilion ever, you know that, but it's also, I believe, the first Peatlands Pavilion ever at any global policy setting forum. This shows how far we've come. It's not a coincidence that peatlands have gained international attention recently. That's exactly what we've been working towards. And it's not just one voice, it's many voices speaking loud, clear, bolstered up by science, by knowing and experiencing the value of peatlands for nature, climate, and people. These weeks have shown us that there's so much to share, so much more to learn, and many more people to talk to. The Peatlands Pavilion has hosted diverse events, and everyone sort of shared them, so I won't go into those details, but it's really been heartfelt exchanges from Indigenous communities, youth, business, and policymakers and change makers. And those are the people we need to reach. We need to inspire them, empower them, and enable them to take the peatlands message forward. We welcome more than 250 speakers representing diverse stakeholders, from ministers, researchers, private sector, NGOs, local communities. You've seen them. Over 2,700 people from 100 countries registered for the first ever Peatland Pavilion online. 76 people joined today. In addition to the physical pavilion, we also had 61% of those registered Peatlands Pavilion participants joining 45 sessions online in real time. So 61% joined real time. And we had an average of 150 participants in real time online per session, with 84% of those really joining online being unaccredited participants. These people and participants didn't have access to the Blue Zone. We've given them that. That was the purpose. Let's look at transformation. Let's look at equality. Let's look at access, and let's hear everyone's voices from around the world. From the depths of Richard Lindsay's notebook came the iconic raindrop structure that will move onto Peatland events around the UK and the world. And you must have already seen it for those of you online as a virtual pavilion. It's going to be a legacy, this Peatlands Pavilion, the virtual Peatlands Pavilion, for future international conferences long after the COP26 closes. And now I'm just going to ask the Toms, one of the Toms, those fabulous Toms, to just play those little snippets so we can enjoy. It was an absolute gem of an idea by two inspired students, and we're just so grateful. And what I love about it is exactly, in case you missed it, this is handmade by those people that you see around you in the team. And I hope you're waving. Please do wave. We also have other people on the call here that have also helped to handmade the program, to hand make the virtual pavilion, Trello boards. It's just been a dynamic collaboration, hard work, grit, and passion. And I'm just really proud of everything we've accomplished. Thanks so much. Back to you. I want to hear from Richard.
Yes, that's me then. Thank you, Diana. Yes, it's certainly been an adventure. It nearly didn't happen. When we arrived 2 weeks ago, what you're all sitting in was a building site piled high with building materials, at least to the height of the TV. There was nothing of our material here at all. We were quite gloomy that first night. We really didn't think this was going to happen at all. And then I saw Sarah talking to the site manager, and I thought, a little ray of hope. And then the security guys threw us out because the badges had changed. And so the next day we came back and we were faced with rubble. But as you can see, the rubble's gone and the pavilion is here. So somehow a miracle happened. But another miracle has happened, and that's in relation to peatlands. I'd like to share a little timeline story with you. So 45 years ago, 1976, I stepped onto my first peatland as a professional peatland specialist. I was an intern, a freshly minted intern, working for the Nature Conservancy Council in the northwest of England. I was sent out to survey some peatlands because none of my colleagues in the NCC had any interest in peatlands, and their thinking was, well, he's a new intern, he can't do any harm, let's send him out and go and work on these peatlands. So I did that, and then I ended up as the peatland specialist. Little did they know that by that one simple act, they were signing the death knell for the organisation they worked for. 37 years ago, 1984, a group of peatland specialists, including myself, came together in Austria to form the International Mire Conservation Group. I was elected the new chair, simply on the basis that I was the only one who was a native English speaker. That was my only qualification. But the IMCG has since become a major force for peatland conservation and sustainable wise use throughout the world. 33 years ago, 1988, we won the battle for the flow country. The Chancellor of the Exchequer stood up in Parliament and announced during his budget speech that the forestry grant scheme, which was driving forestry in flow country, was ended. That was a major victory for peatlands. It was a major victory helped by the IMCG, who actually came to the flow country and toured around and spoke with multiple media outlets. But actually the story was not about peat. The reason it became a global story was because it was a tax dodge. And that really is what won the battle. So peatlands, yeah, they were there, but they weren't really leading. 31 years ago, 1990, I was in a workshop where we were talking about the need to stop peat extraction. And an eminent professor informed us in full confidence that peat extraction involved no carbon emissions whatsoever. There was no point in pursuing the carbon story. It was a non-story as far as peatlands were concerned. Interesting. 29 years ago, 1992, that was a busy year. The UNFCCC was signed, all about carbon. There was nothing about peat. Conventional biological diversity was signed, all about biodiversity, nothing about peat. And it saw the end of the Nature Conservancy Council, which was dismembered because of the victory in the flow country. 25 years ago, 1996, I was invited by the Canadian government, not the UK government, to go to Brisbane to the 6th Ramsar COP and present the very first ever peatland resolution to an intergovernmental treaty. It was accepted. Peat issues were looking up. 1999, 22 years ago, the next Ramsar conference was in Costa Rica, and we saw the genesis of the guidelines for global action plan for peatlands. So now we're talking about global action plans. Things are looking up. Unfortunately, the global action plan has since sort of faded out a bit, but discussions were happening. 11 years ago, 2010, I went to Nagoya in Japan to attend the CBD COP, where essentially I was representing the IUCN, and my job was to sit in the audience like you and jump up repeatedly and annoyingly and say, what about peatlands? Because again, peatlands were just not featuring in the discussion. I was seeing pictures of peatlands on the screens and people weren't recognizing that they were peatlands. So they didn't mention peatlands in the final version, but they did talk about the need to protect carbon-rich systems. So some progress. 2011, major development, IUCN UK Peatland Programme established. That has absolutely transformed the whole story of peatlands, not just in the UK, but it's helped other countries as well to focus. 5 years ago, 2016, the IUCN held its World Conservation Congress in Hawaii. Stuart Brooks was there, and they managed to get a peatland resolution agreed. So again, we now have 2 of the global intergovernmental treaties with explicit recognition of peatland. 2019, 2 years ago, I tentatively suggested that we should have a peatland pavilion at COP, climate COP. Never occurred to me I might have to end up building the blasted thing. If I had, I might have kept my mouth shut. 2020, 1 year ago, 2 of our master students, Hussein Kasim and Mohammed Patel, came up with the iconic Peatland Pavilion design. As soon as I saw it, I knew it was a hit. Absolutely gorgeous. And I turned that into a virtual pavilion mock-up so we could drum up interest in a Peatland Pavilion at COP. 2021, the Peatland COP team, slightly unwisely, in my opinion at the time, said, let's have a physical pavilion as well. I could see all sorts of challenges there, but we agreed to go for it. 8 weeks ago, our new set of master students built the prototype of the iconic water droplet. It sort of collapsed. It was not fit for purpose, but we learned a lot from that exercise. So 6 weeks ago, Jack Clough and I started a rebuild based on what the students had learned and learned not to do. And we created that in our lab at the University of East London. We finished it the night before we had to drive up with it to COP. So 3.5 weeks ago, we completed the rebuild and we headed north in a big Luton van. 3 weeks ago, we came through that big door behind us to find the chaos that I described. We were thrown out by security. It was chaos, basically. So we came in the next day. There were 4 of us. There was myself. There was Jack Clough. There were Sarah Proctor, and we have Julie Van Offlin there. And basically, a miracle happened. Within a week, this is what we managed to produce. I still don't know we managed to produce it. So 2 weeks ago, the impossible had been achieved. I then started on the virtual pavilion because I hadn't had a chance to work on that because we're doing all the physical stuff. But since then, the world has beaten a path to the Peatland Pavilion. Ministers from across the globe have come here to sign MOUs, give speeches and commitments, and be photographed by Julie or Jack in our water droplet. Most of the time I refer to it as the tear droplet because of all the stress we've had behind the scenes. And thank you, Minister. What of the future? What is the legacy? The immediate future sees our team dismantling the pavilion tonight. Then Jack and I drive it south to the Great Fen in Cambridgeshire, Stuart's stamping ground, for a temporary home as legacy. But it now seems inconceivable that there would not be a Peatland Pavilion at the next climate COP, nor at the next CBD COP. nor at the next Ramsar COP. I just cannot conceive of those COPs going ahead without a peatland pavilion. Is this really to be just a one-off event? A joyous celebration of peatlands that then simply remains as a lingering, happy memory? Or is it the start of a whole new frontier for peatlands on the world stage? In the words of certain others who have boldly gone in search of new worlds, new frontiers, may the Peatland Pavilion, in all its forms, live long and prosper. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Richard, and genuinely from the heart, thanks for everything that you've done. Just a few other thanks, and then I think there's some drinks. Sorry, Dianna, maybe we could send you one, or we'll have one for you anyway. So I know they're all there. Yeah. Very good. All right. So just 1 minute of thank yous, if that's okay. So of course, we've got this amazing coordinating group that made all of this happen. It couldn't happen on its own because we've also got this fabulous, even longer list of sponsors. And believe it or not, this costs quite a lot of money. So these organizations have all committed financially to make this Peatlands Pavilion happen. And we're extremely grateful for that. Also to the amazing range of speakers that we've had. Dianna showed you some of the graphs there, and really, really astounding. So people both in this physical space, but also all of our array of online speakers, our array of online participants. So they've all been questioning, they've all been commenting, and they've all been engaging on Twitter, and it's felt like a really kind of connected community that we've created. None of that could have happened without those two guys over there, the two Toms, as they're known. So the two Toms from CrowdComs, that's the organization that we've been working with to deliver this really, really amazing connected experience. So they are for hire, so go and check them out, and we'll definitely be working with them again. And just thank you for not getting COVID, because I'm not quite sure what we would have done without you. Maybe that's why we had two of you, was it? So one as a backup. Great. Okay, good idea. Now, we're joined here by our brilliant online support team. So I think everything that people have done in this physical space, just as much has been done, if not more in certain areas, by this brilliant team that you can see on the screen here, who have been in the background every single day, speaking to our speakers, getting everything lined up, talking, speaking, presenting, and it's been a really, really brilliant experience, actually, working across time zones and working with everybody who's here on the screen. So thank you guys for everything that you've done. Yeah, richly deserved. And just final thanks to the on-site team. So Sarah's probably hanging about at the back somewhere, and Jack. We've got Julie, who's sitting down there. And I really don't want to offend anybody by not mentioning anybody else, but I think everybody else has been either kind of speaking or has got some kind of recognition. So look, thank you everybody. It's been a brilliant experience, actually, and great to be part of that. And I think I feel really cherished, actually, to be part of that team. So thank you very much. The pavilion is now closed. Go and have a drink.